Come on by and have a bite at the Crossroad Diner, where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. Hey everybody, welcome back. Steve McCurdy here in the Crossroad Diner, and I've got a guest by the name of Mitch Gray. Welcome, Mitch. Good to have you in here.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yeah, me too. We were just talking about the principles of the diner, and Mitch and I track very much along the same kind of lines. Give everybody a little bit of a background, Mitch, on who you are, what you do, the elevator speech plus.
The elevator speech plus. Here you go. I'm currently inspirational keynote speaker, personal development coach, small business consultant. I help small businesses learn to create better strategy around hiring, developing people, recruiting people that really align with their business and culture. By the way, help them design great culture as well. I'm an author. My latest book, How to Hire and Keep Great People, is out now. It came out in 2021. You can find it anywhere you buy books. I'm a former pastor, former mental health strengths-based facilitator, entrepreneur, you name it, man. I'm telling you, life takes you where it takes you, and you kind of go. Yeah.
So like me, you can't hold a job, and so you make stuff up.
You are one. I always tell people I am not a good employee. It's easy. I'm easy to fire not because I'm a great person. I just, you have your own mind and you want to go take your own back. So you do.
Well, I think one of us is unnecessary. So, it's a redundancy. We're very much the same person. I'm just like, 2 or 3 decades ahead of you. So Mitch, you understand how the diner works. We're about decisions and authenticity and sometimes making the discovery that what you've been doing is something that you're good at, capable of, but that it isn't you. Do you tell us a story along that line for you?
Yeah, probably my favorite story is since I was 10 years old, all I wanted to do was be a pastor. That was it. At 10 years old, I knew it. Like it was like God spoke to me directly. So I thought and said, here's what you're going to do. So I took that path, went to seminary, got my degree in divinity, went into preaching, started out in youth ministry. I was a worship pastor for a while, got fired from my favorite job as a pastor. And it was then, in that moment, that was about 2005, that I realized it wasn't for me to be working for churches, to be employed by religious institutions. And so I took about a 10, 15-year journey really trying to figure out what does this heart of a pastor, this heart of a nurturer, of a teacher, how does that really manifest in a world that says those people work in clergy and religious institutions, but that's not for me? And so I had to make, it was probably in 2014 that I really settled and surrendered within myself that wasn't the path for me. And that was a huge ordeal, Steve, because that was my 10-year-old dream. And what I say about dreams is we can only interpret them through our current perspective. So we misinterpret often. Yeah, we misinterpret often.
I'm glad that you said that because one of the things that keeps people in a familiar place, there's nothing quite as true as people making a choice of the devil they know versus the devil they don't. Yes. And part of that, I think, is the tension in the argument between, but I'm good at this, therefore, that's what I'm called to do, or that's what God wants me to do, or whatever, because I'm good at it, but I'm not feeling something. And is that selfish? Am I supposed to do this because it's my duty? Is my sacrifice that I'm supposed to not really love it very much? And those points of sincere confusion, authentic wanting to be the person that they should be and make the world better and do their contribution. Really, it fights with that grief quite a bit. What kind of, say something about that intelligent and cool and wonderful.
Yeah, to peel that back even more, you're spot on. I actually have a belief that everyone knows who they are deep within. It's just that we're told no. So an extreme example is third grader says, I want to be a ballerina. And they immediately get told, well, not everyone can be a ballerina, or you can't be a ballerina. And most of the time it's adults telling children no, which is a grave mistake, because what we forget is That third grader may not become a ballerina, but they may become a trainer, or they may become a sports agent, or they may become a writer of music for ballerina. And so we really begin cutting that off. And what happens is, I believe everyone knows who they are in their DNA. I believe that's a spirit about us. When we get told no, either through our internal conversation or what others tell us, we push that down.
Yeah.
And so then we confuse ourselves with, I know who I am, but the world is telling me that only interprets one way. So they either tell us you have to be a doctor, you have to be a ballerina, or you can't have anything to do with medicine or dance. But there are a million opportunities to be tied to the world of medicine without being a doctor. And so rather than saying, let's explore that a little bit more, we say there's only one path. But the reality is there are many paths to get to who we are. Our one sole responsibility in this human experience is to unearth who we are. And that's our business and no one else's. That is no one else's business. But as parents, we get in the way. As friends and mentors, we get in the way. But our responsibility for others is to uplift and inspire that, not to quench it and put it down.
Well, but let me say to that, and this is a question that I'm so glad that you're that you are, you got a degree in divinity and you have preached. And so one of the things that I find is, one of the big 10 is honor thy father and mother. And so your mom or your dad has got this fear because they don't understand that career and they don't know how to be, and they have fear for you and they want to protect you. All of this comes from protection. I mean, sometimes it comes from ego. You need to be like me. But most of the time, I believe
it comes from sincerity. It comes from sincerity. Yes.
Yeah. How do you, and I want to go back to the ballerina too. The journey to becoming a ballerina, on that journey, that may just be the way that your spirit has said to you how to get to where you are. That you do the ballerina thing and you go, gee, I'm not a ballerina, but I would not have ever known about physical therapy. I would have never known about this. I would have never known about these things if I hadn't walked through this door. And so I work with young people a lot, and how do you deal with that? I want to honor my mom and dad, but I also want to be me.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And we really struggle with what's crazy is you often hear in the world Western culture, Eastern culture.
Yes.
And oftentimes Eastern culture is kind of held a little higher because they do have a bit of a more spiritual approach universally. But when you talk about families and moms and dads, Eastern culture is actually much more stringent than Western culture. Eastern culture, for the most part, doesn't often say, go be who you want to be. Kind of the North American culture has kind of said, go be who you want to be. But at the same time, when my kids were growing up, they're all adults now living their own lives. It does become a real challenge as a parent to say, there's going to be a sacrifice to pay if you're going to take. I'll give you my son, for example. He wanted to be a professional football player. So my role then as a parent was to inspire that and empower him as much as possible. But I also wanted to educate him on the risks, physically, mentally, financially, emotionally, of taking the path of a professional football player. And so to me, the role became education and empowerment. I can both educate them on the risks, the successes, what it's going to take, and empower where they feel like they're led. My son earned a full scholarship to play major Division I football. He ended up having to retire from college football because of injuries and concussions. Obviously decided to not pursue professional football, but now he's a successful commercial real estate agent. And if you ask him what makes him successful today, 90% of it's the lessons he learned playing football.
Right.
So to your point, the thing I like to always encourage people with, and myself included, is when you can live from the statement of, I am here in this moment in time.
Yeah.
That will open the opportunity to success regardless of how the path unfolds. The path unfolding, Steve, is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to show up.
Yeah.
To simply show up. And when we show up, the path unfolds as it may. And surrendering to that becomes then the new challenge, right?
And
However
I
the
think
path unfolds.
Oh, I think you're nailing it, because I think, there's a wonderful graph that says my plan, and it's a dot here and the goal there, and it's a straight line. And then there's the next picture is what really happened, and it's everywhere. And I think that one of the points that you made that resonated heavily with me is our path is to show up and to pay attention, and it's about North Stars. It's about going in a direction and being open to the idea that that's a calling that you can understand at this point. And in the path, you may go, oh, I'm not supposed that. No, I'm really attracted to this over here, but I would have never learned about this if I hadn't stepped into this. And that's not a cop out. That's not a taking an easier path, but the tension between those two questions is one that you have to live through. And
all we know is what we know.
Yeah. So how did that play out for you? How did that play out in your development after the pastor thing?
Let's go back to that story, right? So I've probably suffered with depression and other mental health challenges since I was a kid, because I can look back. In 2005, when I got fired from that job, I went through a deep, deep depression.
Right.
Suicidal ideation, a suicide attempt. Because I had attached myself so much to the dream that when the dream was gone, I lost my identity.
Yep.
And so for me, it became a very dark place mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And through therapy and coaching, I was able to name it as depression, which is the first step to empowerment, to name something. And so for me, then it became a journey of navigating and really empowering and educating myself on what it looked like in my life, not others' expectations of me. And that's not an easy thing to really remove those. And in fact, to me, it's an ongoing life. It never ends. You become more effective at it, but it never ends. So then it became this idea of how do I create these habits, these routines, what I now call anchors. And I had probably never really taken inventory of that. What are my daily anchors? What are my daily habits, routines, rituals that can keep me grounded, centered, and present? And those evolve over time. But that was the journey. And then it became, asking myself the question, I know what my essence is, and my essence is inspiring and empowering others. Periods, no ifs, ands, or buts. So how can I manifest that in the world? I do it, as I open the show with, through business coaching. I do it through personal development. I do it through spiritual teaching. I do it by speaking on a variety of topics. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And everything we do is based on basic human behavior. We all want to be included. We want to be loved. We want to have purpose. And we want to have value. And if we can apply those principles internally and then externally to others, regardless of what position or market we're at in life,
right,
then the path does unfold in such a beautiful way. And it unfolds with people then coming together and walking alongside each other and asking questions like, how can I help you? And when we need it, being able to have the courage to say, I need your help, and so that becomes a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think it's where you attract your tribe, or you start finding out your place in the world. And I think that you start finding that surprising connection to people who seem to finish your sentences,
Yes.
and who help you ask better questions. Because when you do launch into, when you have an identity separation, your son had that. When he quit playing football, he had to figure out, who am I in this world when I'm not a football player? And
100%.
Yeah. And so once you're doing that, though, you start recognizing that you may have been alone, very lonely before that, because people didn't see the world through the glasses that you wear.
Yeah. And quite frankly, never will, but it's about sharing those glasses.
Right.
It's about sharing those glasses as we can. And it is a very lonely place. And let's be honest, we're not great at asking for help.
Yeah.
We're just not. We're always learning how to do that better. And I think as a society, human society, we are becoming more self-aware. But we're not great at it. And so we isolate. Loneliness comes from isolation, and isolation stems from us choosing to be alone. And so it does become, how can I attract my tribe? How can I have clarity on the type of people and energies I want to be around,
Right.
the type
Yeah.
of people and energies that give me life. And when we can become really cognizant of that and intentional with that, it changes the game. It's a very powerful, miraculous thing.
We have been, the way that the show works is on Mondays we do skills training and identifying who you are, what your mission is. And then on Thursdays we do this with you, with others, case studies of how that has played out. So one of the questions I'll ask you is, you re-identified who you are. Did you formalize that as a mission, a thing that you want, that this is what you want your life to be?
I really believe it was gifted to me, Steve. Really that dream as a 10-year-old kid hasn't changed. It's just been repackaged. So the gift is the same. The presentation is a little bit different. And actually what's changed for me is having to dig deeper into that essence.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to people often, and they're like, it's kind of interesting because I believe I have that was gifted to me. And I understand that many people don't have that same feeling. So then it just becomes taking inventory of what gets you excited, what gets you passionate, what really piques your curiosity. There's a Zen Buddhist teaching that says, the beginner's mind is where you find yourself. So when you take yourself way back to the innocence of a child, where was your curiosity most piqued? And that's kind of an interesting journey to take. And for me, it became retaking that journey, right? And reinterpreting it in a different way. And so it's been kind of just swimming in that, what I call a gift, and something that I didn't necessarily choose, but I absolutely love more than anything. And that's inspiring people to live deeper, more meaningful lives, to find the very purpose we're talking about.
So you got a book that's good for companies about how to hire the right people. Do you have other material that people could dip into?
Yeah, so I had multiple books before then that were all inspirational, spiritual. The Gathering Place is one that's still available. It came out in 2018. And what's interesting about how to hire and keep great people is the first chapter is spirituality in the workplace. And so even if you don't run a business, in fact, I had a dad tell me once, I actually learned how to be a better father by reading How to Hire and Keep Great People, because it's all human behavior stuff. And so anyone can read it. The title and everything goes toward business. My next book that we're working on now will be out the end of this year. And again, it'll be kind of focused toward leaders, but it'll be really apropos to almost anybody that wants to read it.
Cool. We're going to put in the show notes links to resources and how to hear more of your good stuff, because like I say, you and I are kind of singing out of the same hymnal in many, many ways, and I want to know more. So at that, I think the people that get attracted to my show and get sent to this show by other folks who recognize that they're at a crossroad of some point, I think they need baby steps. They need, a starting place. And I like that business about going back. Could you articulate that very, very cleanly as a simple way, and probably in the midst of some kind of grief, to accept the notion that your highest self knows what you need?
Yes.
And how do you start listening for that voice? Yeah.
The beginner's mind. Think about as a child what really piqued your curiosity. When you can dig into that, swim in that a little bit, it will open doors of, let's just call them revelations, that maybe you haven't thought of before. And especially we're talking about crossroads. The one thing we don't have time to get into today is that idea of decision making when you're at a when you're at a crossroads. And a lot of times people only see what they can see. So I'm at a crossroads. I have one of two decisions to make. The other thing to think about as you're meditating or just going about your day is pulling yourself out to a 50,000 foot view. What decision would you make if you were unattached to the decision?
Mm-hmm.
So removing yourself from the crossroads, taking a 50,000 foot view and become unattached to the decision or the dream or whatever that looks like for you. And that idea of non-attachment can really empower things in life just kind of unfolding. Because oftentimes the decision is made for us. It's just, again, about surrendering to that decision and receiving it and just allowing it to be what it is.
I had a teacher once who, his technique for teaching me how to do what you just talked about, to get to the 50,000 foot level, because I was on the ground, and
Yes.
he said, okay, start by looking at yourself where you are. Step out from yourself and now, and then step back and watch you watching you, and just keep going with that. And you start disassociating from the myopic problem focus to a much more universal place. And, you know, it seems like a trick and whatnot, but dang, if it doesn't work. I mean, it's very, very useful.
It does. It does. I took the extreme way and just went skydiving. And so I go skydiving, and I love the approach.
Not from 50,000 feet, you did.
No, 12,000. But what I love about your approach and your teacher's approach is, if anyone practices the art of meditation, that really is what meditate, especially sitting meditation.
Right.
Right. Once you get into the routine of practicing it, that what we call floating, that's exactly what your teacher has taught you. It's the idea of floating above yourself. And it takes some practice. But when you can get to the point, you know, that you can sit down for 10 or 15 minutes and really step into that floating outside of yourself, my gosh, it allows wisdom to come to you that you forgot or didn't know. It allows guidance to come to you. Just so many advent, you know, they've even proven scientifically and medically that it betters your health, you know, mentally, physically, emotionally. And so there's so many assets to that single practice of meditation. And, you know, the idea your teacher is giving to you is the idea that you often get when you're in the practice of meditation. And it does work. I don't understand it. I don't necessarily want to understand. I just know that it does work. Yeah.
Oh no, I've got to understand it all. I got to have a sense that I am in control of this, or it's going to sweep me away, and I'll be on the poor side of town selling pencils.
We won't let that happen, Steve. We won't let that happen.
What?
We won't let that happen. We won't let that happen.
Thank you. I'm gonna send you my phone number. Please check in with me once a month to make sure I'm on the right path. Mitch, I'm so grateful to have you here and to hear these. It's very affirming to me, and the things that I believe that some folks could say are airy fairy. So, you know, you got to be realistic in life. You have to, you know. But so, parting words. When people talk about the Mitch Gray episode on Crossroad Diner, what do you want this takeaway to be?
What thought within you did this conversation bring about? What thought did we provoke that you've never really considered before? Because it is those thoughts that come to mind, and then you get busy and forget. Come back to those thoughts. Write them down. Listen to this episode again. And really sit with those. Don't sit with them to figure them out. Sit with them to receive them. That's the takeaway that I want for others. What thought did we provoke that you've never entertained before? Because my guess is there's an answer there that you've been awaiting.
Well, I think it's no coincidence that you've got a halo in your background. I think.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. It was great visiting with you. And we will put in the notes places where people can learn more about you and your message, because it's a powerful one and it's an empowering one. So until next time on the Crossroad Diner, I'm Steve McCurdy. This is my buddy Mitch Gray, and we are glad that you were with us. See you next time. Thanks for being with us here in the Crossroad Diner, where your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. Whether you're watching the video or listening on the podcast, check out the show notes so you'll know how to get in touch with our guests or us in case you want individual coaching, or you need a speaker, or you might want to tell us your story of your time in the Crossroad Diner.